Recognize Representative Evans from the great state of Colorado. Welcome to the committee, and also I enjoyed our conversation on this very subject yesterday, so I recognize you for 5 minutes for questioning.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Chairman. I enjoyed the conversation as well. Thank you to the ranking member, and thank you, of course, to all of our witnesses for coming on this snowy day to have this conversation. Mr. Oxman, I'll start with you first. We've talked a lot about competition with China and the CCP. In my district, I have a company that uses AI both in the manufacture and the deployment of technology that's used to stabilize suspended loads. So right now, it's predominantly used for helicopter rescue hoists, military search and rescue, things like that. But this technology can also be applied to critical infrastructure around, for instance, cranes, port cranes, cranes for construction. And so I think most of us are probably familiar with some of the risks of the U.S. relying on Chinese cranes for that critical infrastructure. And so my question to you is, what role does AI play both in being able to protect and harden some of our critical infrastructure from malicious attacks abroad, and how can we best protect and promote that intellectual property rights and keep that from being compromised by some of our foreign competitors?
Thank you, Congressman Evans, for the question. This is actually the topic that I think the Trump administration is spending some of the most time on, with the very early release of the AI executive order and the recent announcement from the Office of Science and Technology Policy opening a request for input, for inquiry from industry into AI rulemaking. We're very pleased to see this early attention to this issue because, as you noted, there are critical national security implications of making American AI technology available internationally, but we have to balance that with the need to address international markets and give American companies the opportunity to sell around the world to the 95% of the people who live on the planet who don't live in the United States. So you're right that these are critically important issues. And that balance of national security and economic interests is one that is very important and very challenging, because we do want to make sure that these use cases of AI that we've talked about today are available here and also available to our allies. As you noted, AI can be a critical tool in cybersecurity defenses, for example, augmenting human capability and making sure that we are hardening our networks and our infrastructure against potential adversaries. So I think all of these issues are critically important. It's heartening to see the Trump administration paying such close attention and soliciting industry input, and we look forward to working with you on these important issues as well.
Thank you. Moving on to Mr. Kinder, in your testimony, you talked a lot about the use of AI in manufacturing. And we oftentimes hear when we're having this conversation that oil and gas levels in the U.S. are at record level productions. But I know from conversations with my local electric utility that we're going to need, at least in my area, we're going to need 3 times as much electricity as currently produced right now to meet some of the growing demands for digital and for AI purposes. And so my question to you is, specifically with regard to energy availability, what can Congress do to help ensure that the United States and not our foreign adversaries remains the global leader both in AI and also in the manufacturing that AI supports?
Thank you for your question, Congressman Evans. With respect to energy, I mean, AI will use a tremendous amount of energy. I think what Congress, can do is to both strengthen the grid, establish policies that help us to strengthen the grid, and also help us define all sources of energy production, renewable, non-renewable, to be able to power. Now, I would also add that we are in a stage right now where I believe chips will get more efficient. I believe that training of models will become more efficient, and that energy use will become more efficient in AI. We're still in early days in terms of training a lot of these models.
Thank you. And then last question to Ms. Humpton. You brought up one of my favorite topics, which is microgrids and using AI to be able to implement, we were just talking about that, all of the above energy policy. So can you just talk a little bit more about how AI can be used when you have rooftop solar panels that are feeding electricity into the grid, then the cloud cover rolls over, the temperature drops, now the heaters kick on, and in the space of just a few minutes, now you have electrons flowing the other way to now power houses that used to be powering the grid, but now it's going the other way. Can you talk about the complexity of managing the grid in AI?
Thank you, Congressman. This is my favorite topic. I actually think this is the most exciting segment of the U.S. economy right now, is the grid edge, right? Where the old-fashioned grid and its transmission and distribution meets all those users. Well, now all those users of electricity can also produce electricity. Everything from our cars to our homes to our carports. So the idea of using the power of software, with large utilities now using software to manage the flow across their distribution networks, to even now the smallest users. My mom put rooftop solar on her house. She sells back to the utility when she has extra, and she buys when she needs to, and she has the lowest electricity bills she's ever had. These are simple concepts, but they're complex when they come together into basically what the National Academy of Engineers called the greatest invention of the last century, the grid. It's a very complex organism. So I think the work of Congress to ensure that we support the administration in finding ways to trim back regulation that prevents us from being able to make changes, the attention to technologies and the ability to educate policymakers. And by the way, Siemens stands ready to work side by side with you. This is exciting times.
Thank you so much. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Now I'll recognize Representative Trahan for her